Welcome to part 7 of me sharing my life story because it's easier than writing a book. Life got really crazy after my dad died when I was 10, and my mom and I went on this big trip all over the country and up into Canada. But before that, we were still taking care of Uncle Giff. Or my mom was taking care of Uncle Giff. I was 10, so not taking care of much of anyone, except I would sit and talk to him a lot. He ended up moving from Milton Freewater, where he was living, into our apartment, and he stayed there for the rest of his life. And he was a brilliant man. He had Parkinson's, so his body didn't work well, but his mind did. And I would sit next to him for hours and hours and listen to him tell the most incredible stories about really the Wild West and driving cattle across the country and what it was like to be a rancher. Like, it was truly fascinating. I highly recommend listening to your elders and hearing their stories because they're pivotal in your life. And that grounding of having him around after my dad was killed really helped me just ground and be in a picture larger than mine. And at the same time, I was tormented. I would sit at my bedroom window and I would wait for my dad to come home, and he obviously wouldn't because he wasn't alive anymore. But I waited and I waited and I waited for the months until summer when mom and I went on that trip. And the trip was a big releasing. I guess it just occurred to me that I don't even know where she put our stuff. We must have put our stuff in storage, because when we came back from our trip up into Canada and down the East Coast where my grandma lived, and then over to California where we had other friends and family, by the time we got up to Oregon, my mom had used that $10,000 life insurance. I don't know how she made it go so far. But we did the whole trip, and then she bought a little house, and the house was $32,000 for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, adorable house up in Joseph, Oregon. And she just started a new life. She started to break the religious psychosis. She pulled away from the matriarchal cult she was a part of. She was like, these beliefs just aren't working for me anymore. And she started to really go on her deep spiritual journey. But because it was very individual for her, I felt really lost. And the kids at school were making fun of me so bad because I'm like 5'9". I've shrunk some as I've gotten older, but I was like 5'9" at 12 years old. And because my dad was all over the news and it was what everybody talked about for months or years, in fact, I'm sure they're still talking about it because that's how small towns are, is that I felt so excluded and ostracized. I was already the new kid. I was so tall. Everybody made fun of me. And then my dad was on the news, and having that type of pressure was so incredibly painful and toxic. And the bullies were awful. I had one guy that broke my backpack and I punched him in the nose. And it was just such a horrible experience of trying to integrate into the real world with so much trauma that came suddenly. And also between 10 and 12, all my friends started talking about adult activities, and that was when it became real to me that what I had experienced wasn't like normal, and that there was something wrong with me, and all this shame and guilt just saturated my soul. And I started partying by the time I was like 12 years old. I was sneaking out of the house and doing drugs and just getting in trouble and doing all the things you're not supposed to do. But I was so broken and so hurt, I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. And my mom had always been a stay-at-home mom, and now she had to work 3 jobs to pay the bills. And so she went from being home all the time and around to just being gone. And in hindsight, I really understand. I understand what she was going through, but at the time, I just felt so lonely. I would come home from school and no one was there. I was an only child, so I developed an eating disorder. There was my mom, God, there were so many parties. I was just sneaking out and going to parties, bonfires. And my mom ended up meeting this guy, and he was like a regular at the parties that I would attend. And it was so awful because she didn't know who he was. She didn't understand that he was like sleeping with the whole county and was just awful. But he had money, and he was quite a few years, like 7 years younger than her. And he just swept her off her feet. Like, she just fell in love with him so hard. And they got married, God, after like 3 weeks, a month of knowing each other. And it was so fast. And then to make it worse, they got married on the anniversary of my dad's death. And so it was the same week. It wasn't the same day, but it was the same week. And that just caused so much pain in me, because I was like, can't we just honor him in this space? And they didn't, and she didn't. And he was just horrid, because it's like, him and I knew this, that he was partying and stuff, but she didn't know. And I told her, but she just didn't believe me, didn't listen to me. And so he moved into our cute little house. It was just the two of us, and he brought all of his man shit. And it was awful, because he was like trying to be an authority over me. And I'm like, no one can step in and just replace my dad. And he was such a hard-handed authoritarian type. He'd hold me up by my shirt and have me repeat horrible things. And he just wasn't kind. And so I started leaving home at 14, because home wasn't safe. Like, I wasn't listened to. And my mom ended up getting pregnant with another child, and I just wasn't even a part of the family. She had moved on, and she made a whole new family, and I was just the remnants of what was. And it hurt so bad. And my life got so much more wild. I just kept partying. I ended up witnessing a friend unaliving themselves. Like, there was so much grotesque pain, and it was just devastating. And I just spiraled further and further. At one point, I tried to unalive my best friend with a kitchen utensil, and my mom walked in just at the perfect time, and it was the first and only time she ever took me to therapy. Because I had blacked out during the whole thing. She walked in, saw what was happening, tackled me, took me to therapy, and the therapist just said, wow, she's got multiple personalities. I can't help her. It was during the Sybil, everybody was excited about multiple personalities, and Sybil was going wild, and they're like, yep, she's one of them, and we can't help. She's beyond help. And that left a wound in me, that I just knew how fucked up I was, which is a horrible thing to say to a 13-year-old. But so by 14, I'm gone, and I end up working jobs around my mom. And so we're in the same county, and she just kind of let me run wild and do whatever I wanted to do, but kind of kept tabs on me. And I was going to school full time, working 2 or 3 jobs myself. And I was on honor roll. I dropped out of high school at 15 years old on honor roll. I was brilliant. I just didn't know how to function with the level of trauma that I had. And everybody tried to control me, and I just was not controllable. Oh, at one point I'm living in this like illegal halfway house and hitchhiking to and from school, because it's a couple miles out of town. I'm hitchhiking to and from school, and this old mushroom guy, he was picking mushrooms all the time. He'd pick me up and take me to and from school, and I don't know how I lived. I don't know how I was safe. It's just so crazy looking back. That was the mid 90s, and maybe 95, 94, 95. It was just a thing. I did all of it without a cell phone. We used pay phones, and I was just going back and forth trying to stack some cash and receive an education. But then 4 days after my 16th birthday, I caused the biggest car accident, and it was pretty darn ugly. So that's what's coming next.